The residents of Słupsk, Poland have made their wishes clear. They demand the city authorities and the government stop mass immigration into their city. The residents of Słupsk took to the streets after a foreigner integration center was opened there in early June. They fear that the introduction of migrants will lead to the kind of pathologies that Western Europe has been struggling with for years. We don't want to feel like victims. We don't want to feel threatened by foreigners increasingly appearing on our streets. We can see this happening, and we know what is going on in Western Europe. The residents of Słupsk have submitted a petition to the town hall demanding that the authorities adopt a resolution not to accept immigrants under any potential forced relocation program. As a local community, we demand that the authorities take decisive action to ensure our safety and stop investments that encourage the further influx of migrants into our cities and villages. We consider it unacceptable that decisions on immigration are made without prior public consultation. Over 600 people signed the document, but this did not make much of an impression on the mayor of Słupsk, who accused them of hate speech. We strongly oppose any actions that promote exclusion, intolerance, and hate speech. As local authorities, we cannot remain indifferent to attempts to create social divisions and stir up hostility towards migrants, regardless of the reasons for their arrival. The problem, ignored by many in power, continues to fester. Recent incidents indicate that Poland's borders are getting increasingly porous. Here is a group of a dozen or so foreigners who are wandering the streets of Szczecin on Friday evening.
Excuse me, do you speak English? Do you speak English? What are you doing here? We are from Somalia.
It turned out they were Somalis, most likely brought to Poland by German authorities. Here, too, nearly 400 residents of the city signed a petition against the forced relocation of illegal immigrants and the establishment of a foreigner integration center. Today, the people of Szczecin are afraid to let their children go out alone. I have just received information that migrants were taking photos of children at a local lake. This morning, I received photos of migrants lying under a tree in Żeromski Park in Szczecin, next to a children's playground. This is no joke. This is not fiction. It is all documented. The number of potential asylum seekers is also growing. In 2023, Poland accepted almost 9,500 applications for international protection. In 2024, 16,895 applications were accepted. In the last 3 months alone, Poland has accepted almost 4,000 asylum applications. At the end of May, nearly 13,000 immigrants were waiting for their asylum applications to be processed. All this despite the suspension of asylum applications at the Belarusian border. Donald Tusk has announced a moratorium on issuing residence permits to immigrants. But, according to these reports, we can see very clearly that the western border is porous. Why are immigrants flooding in ever-increasing numbers? Because Donald Tusk will not defy the will of Berlin or Brussels. Thus, Germany continues to dump tens of thousands of unwanted migrants into Poland with full impunity.
The president of Ukraine has announced that agreements with European Union countries on arms production are to be concluded this summer. Poland is not on the list. Despite the enormous support for Ukraine, despite the involvement of millions of Poles, despite the help we have given our eastern neighbour, as I have said many times, Poland has long been absent from the table called Ukraine. We will not cooperate with them. They will give us a wide berth. Donald Tusk is once again allowing himself to be outmanoeuvred. During the United Rights rule, Poland was the first country to help Ukraine when it was attacked by Russia. Hundreds of pieces of heavy military equipment were sent there from our country, including a company of Leopard tanks, and over 1 million Ukrainians found refuge with us. The situation is very worrying and bad for Poland. Poland should be in the game. It should also negotiate such agreements, although it seems that Ukraine is not particularly interested in this at the moment. I have the impression that the Ukrainians have been focusing on Germany and Europe for a long time and wish to build their European agenda at the expense of relations with Poland. We asked a member of Donald Tusk's government about Polish interests in Ukraine. Shouldn't we participate in this? Of course we should participate. Just as we have supported Ukraine so far, we should also take advantage of the funds that are available for defense in Europe today. Everything indicates that Prime Minister Tusk probably has more important matters to attend to, although, as he himself said, no one in Europe can outplay him. As a rule, there are announcements here, either in the Polish media or in Parliament, that we will be at the forefront of something, that we have achieved something on an EU-wide scale. But as we can see, this has little to do with reality. Just as he was not invited to the reconstruction of Ukraine at all, and Germany is already doing business there. And it is exactly the same with armaments. If we are talking about money for European armament, everyone knows today that this is money for the Germans and the French. The question arises as to why Donald Tusk went to Kiev, because even though he travelled in a different carriage from the European leaders, he was supposed to look after Polish interests there. Decisions about the future were made not in the carriage in which Donald Tusk travelled, but in the lounge where the leaders of Western European countries travelled. Also the future of the arms industry. As you can see, Poland is not included in this pool. Perhaps this time the carriage in which the current Prime Minister was supposed to travel was not even brought to the station. Today, Ukraine is making deals with Western Europe over our heads, and Donald Tusk is either turning a blind eye to this or focusing on completely indirect issues in domestic politics, also without success. Donald Tusk's entire model of functioning in Polish politics is to distract Poles from fundamental issues, and these are fundamental issues. The matter is interesting in that it seems that we have bargaining chips that we are not using. Most of the aid for Ukraine goes through our country. Logistics and the fact that we are a transshipment hub for materials and goods needed by Ukrainians is something we could use to our political advantage. But our politicians are afraid to do so. It needs to be done, but as we can see, they are not capable of it. Unfortunately, we are once again being pushed out of important contracts and important decision-making bodies, and we simply do not count in Europe. This is a very bad situation for Poland and, to put it bluntly, incomprehensible, since the government and the Prime Minister personally boast about their great contacts in the European Union, boast about their position, and say no one in Europe can outplay them. Perhaps the Prime Minister was right about being outmanoeuvred, but he did not say everything, because it seems that no one is outmanoeuvring Donald Tusk, because no one is playing with him. Warnings of attacks against American citizens and soldiers stationed in the Middle East. Tehran has threatened retaliation for American bombing of nuclear facilities. Militants in Yemen and Iraqi militias financed by Iran have already announced attacks on US units. In Europe, intelligence services are warning of possible terrorist attacks. Iranian leaders are seeking support from allies and vow not to lay down their arms until they have punished Israel and America. Israel wants to finish the job. This is how analysts describe the next wave of bombings. After the US strike on the nuclear facilities of the Iranian nuclear program, Tel Aviv is mainly targeting the regime's security apparatus. At the moment, we are continuing to destroy the Iranian regime's ability to launch and produce missiles. Air Force planes are intensifying their attacks in the Tehran area, focusing on the Revolutionary Guard Command and all elements that pose a threat to the state of Israel. According to Israeli media, Tel Aviv is slowly exploring the possibility of ending its operations against Iran. The American strike may have been employed to give Netanyahu the option of withdrawing from the conflict. Israeli forces are finding it increasingly difficult to repel Iranian missile attacks. The aim of the operation was to destroy Iran's nuclear program, and according to Israel, it was successful. I have no doubt that the Iranian regime wants to eliminate us. That is why we launched this operation, to put an end to specific threats to our existence, the nuclear threat and the ballistic missile threat. We are making progress step by step to achieve these goals, and we are very close to achieving them. However, Iran will not leave the attacks by Israel and the United States unanswered. The regime has announced strikes on military bases throughout the region. In Qatar, the US Embassy has ordered its citizens to find safe shelter. In Syria and Iraq, US military bases have been targeted by pro-Iranian militias operating there. In Yemen, Houthi militants have announced a return to attacks on Western tankers and commercial shipping heading for the Suez Canal. We will not allow any side issues to distract us from focusing on defending our beloved Iran. What matters to us now is the decisive defense of Iran's essence and the repulsion of evil enemy, who, with the support of the United States and some European countries, has started an unjust war against this country. Western Europe may also find itself in the crosshairs of terrorist groups linked to Iran. Swedish authorities are warning of possible attacks. The regime in Tehran believes that during last week's negotiations in Geneva, representatives of France and the United Kingdom were well aware of the planned American strike.
The timing, nature, and the scale of Iran's proportionate response will be decided by its armed forces. Throughout history, the resilient and united Iranian nation has withstood deeper wounded and faced more vicious enemies, and this time too. It will show its dignity, strength, and greatness to the world.
Given the moves made by the Iranian authorities, Iran is desperately seeking support, perhaps not only to exert diplomatic pressure on the West. The Iranian foreign minister traveled to Moscow to meet war criminal Putin, where he received guarantees of Russian support. These aggressive actions by Israel and the United States are completely illegal and violate international rules and norms. We are defending our sovereignty and our country, and our defense is justified. Iran's decision to possibly block the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil is transported daily, may be crucial. Such a decision will primarily affect Europe, but also China, which may delay Tehran's final decision. According to analysts, this war, even if Israel efficiently ends the operation, will continue as long as the Ayatollah regime rules in Tehran.
There's also the possibility that in the weeks ahead, this devolves into basically a very familiar piece of the Israeli-Iranian story, where the two sides go at one another with cyber, with assassinations, with black ops, an occasional strike or two. Iran relies on its proxies.
The overthrow of the regime, at least for now, is rather unlikely without an external strike. The elimination of the supreme leader will make him a martyr and, as has happened in the past, will unite the nation. On the other hand, the internal structures of the Iranian authorities are currently in disarray and incapable of attempting to overthrow the leader, especially since, in wartime conditions, such actions would clearly be perceived as treason. Thousands of people have been evacuated from Chios, a Greek island in the Aegean Sea. The authorities in Chios have declared a state of emergency. Firefighters from all over Greece are battling the blaze, which is spreading in 3 directions. Strong winds are hampering the efforts of hundreds of firefighters. The fire has already consumed hundreds of hectares of forest, moving north, west and south of the city of Chios, the island's capital, causing power outages and forcing thousands of residents to flee. The situation is serious. We are afraid. I took the dogs. I hope everything will be fine and our house will not burn down. But this is a difficult time for us. The fire broke out around noon in the central part of the island and quickly spread in 3 directions. Authorities suspect arson. If I hadn't been here, my house would have burned down. I managed to stave off the fire with a bucket and a garden hose. Unfortunately, I couldn't save the entirety of my greenhouse. The island's authorities have issued an urgent appeal for water, food and medical supplies to support firefighters and volunteers. We are very upset. The fire is approaching our homes. They told us to leave and we are leaving. I am devastated. Greece has been severely affected by the economic impact of frequent forest fires in recent years. Hundreds of millions of euros have been allocated for compensation and the modernization and purchase of equipment, including helicopters and firefighting aircraft. This year, a record army of nearly 20,000 firefighters has been hired in anticipation of a difficult fire season.